I don't want to say this out loud, so please, grain of salt, the OKC Thunder, a bit overrated right now.
Oh, really?
I think we've all fallen in love with them over the past year. And I think
that's a hot take. I see everyone putting them number 1 seed in the West.
I think regular season team, they're absolutely great. Yeah. But I think in the playoffs, what I saw last year is it all came down to Shea scoring. And I think we look at them as a deep team. They have a bunch of guys, a bunch of two-way players. But in the playoffs, Jalen Williams, J-Dub didn't play well. Chet had trouble shooting the ball. Isaiah Joe had trouble playing. It was Wiggins, who's usually their 7th, 8th man, who was closing games for them. Now here in The Cut, we challenge our guests to finish a tub of ice cream before the end of the conversation. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Cool Table. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather. Now, we are here with a special guest, digital producer for the Toronto Star, covering basketball basically all over the country and beyond. Libaan Osman, thank you for joining us.
My guy, appreciate you always.
Man, I'm excited about this season, honestly. I feel like it's been a long time coming. The hype feels like it's built almost like a season of a show.
Yeah.
And we waited a long time for this. So I was excited to bring you on. I wanted to talk ball. Before we even get into the nitty gritty, how has your summer been in terms of just covering the league, following the league? How's your summer been?
It's been good. I've covered recently the draft, summer league. Now preseason started that. Team was out in Montreal. I wasn't out there, but it's an interesting team. I wouldn't say I'm super excited because this team, there's 2 ways it could go, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of my coverage, I'm I'm focused on Canadian basketball coverage. So there's a lot of Canadians also on the Raptors too. So following RJ Barrett, those guys, and it's just very exciting. I would say watch for development. That's what I'm excited about with the Raptors this season.
Yeah, I think it's just an exciting time in Canada basketball in general because
for sure.
To have a couple of good Canadians on the Raptors, we don't always get that. We usually have had a couple, 1 or 2 the past few seasons.
Yeah.
But I think RJ and Kelly are probably some of the most decorated.
Yeah.
We've had, and then the WNBA team coming here. That's pretty exciting. The guys coming up in the drafts coming up is exciting. So although the team itself is not the same, I think it's still an exciting time. I want to talk about the Raptors' actual team. A lot of people, I think, are kind of confused on how to view this team. Of course, Scottie got a big contract.
Big.
IQ got a big contract.
Big.
So for those people who are, not sure of where those contracts came from, how should someone be perceiving this team? Is this a play-in team, playoff team, or do you see them as more kind of in the lottery again?
I think Masai and Darko said it best in their opening presser at Media Day. This is year 1 of the rebuild. That's what they said. That's how we should look at it.
Yeah.
I even will take a step back and say, hey, they should tank. Straight up, this next draft class, studs. But also just looking at it as development year, just in terms of you're building around Scottie, you're building around IQ, you're also building around RJ. You're looking at them as sort of the big 3 of this team. So when I think about it, it's hey, can Scottie take that next step to be an all-NBA guy? Can Quick prove that he can lead a team as a lead guard? Because he's been off the bench in New York. He just got paid, so let's see if he can do it.
Prove
RJ
he's
too.
a starter, yeah.
Exactly. So if you can prove it consistently in that he can lead a team as a point guard, right? So it's a lot of things to look at, but I'm excited just to see Scottie's next leap. That to me is going to be really exciting.
I think that's interesting you mentioned Scottie because this is probably their first time using the word rebuild so publicly. So when you say tank, I'm listen, we just got to rebuild.
But those guys don't want it. If you ask Scottie, he's not thinking tank. Those guys want to compete, right? And that's what you expect. Masai even said it. When he talks to those guys, they want to win. So at best, I expect a play-in team. If everything hits, there'll be a play-in team. If not, they'll be tanking. They'll be especially injuries piling up right now. I expect them to try to win. The schedule is right now. If you look at it, it's
tough.
It's a gauntlet right now,
and it's a start too.
And it's insane. So for me, I'm okay, go out, see what you can do in this conference, and If you exceed expectations, amazing. But if you don't, hey man, Cooper flag, man.
Capture the flag. We're trying to capture the flag this year.
My flag, my hashtag though is wave the white flag.
Wait, I like that. Wave
Come
the
on.
white flag. I like that.
Come on.
I think we're in an interesting spot too because I think when I talk about players to watch, our big three is obviously the guys to watch. But these guys all have been in playoff situations, even though they're all young players. RJ and IQ been to the playoffs with the Knicks. Scotty's been to the playoffs with the Raps already. Even Pirtle's been to the playoffs with a few teams. So I think that these guys all have the chance now to be the leaders on this team. And I think that's probably why they're trying to go for the play-in. For me, RJ is a guy to watch. I think RJ had his best kind of stretch of his career for the Raptors at the end of the season last year. In the Olympics, maybe the second best player on that team.
I agree.
So I think even myself, what I thought of RJ, I kind of got to recalibrate.
Everyone has.
Yeah.
Do you see what they were saying about him before they even traded for him? Like he was described as a toxic asset.
Yeah, a toss-in to the trade.
People were like, oh, okay, quickly is the big draw. Amazing. Oh, RJ, we'll see what you could do, like kind of revamp your image here.
Yeah.
But to me, he's been the best player in this trade so far. And quickly needs to prove that he's worth what we're talking about. RJ's, to me, is like efficiently wise. He's been able to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. He just needs to improve probably on the defensive end a lot. So other than that, I'm like, okay, I know what I can get from RJ Barrett. I'm just looking at quickly. I'm like, can you lead a team and be the main point guard? That's my biggest question.
Do you think he can do that? Because I was a big Quickly fan when he was in New York. And when the trade happened, I was so hyped for Quickly. I've always liked him as a player. I thought he could do big things. Do you believe in him and actually becoming that starting point guard? Or do you think that's asking a little too much?
I'll be honest, I'm kind of iffy. I'm iffy in terms of just, I know he's been working hard in the summer, just from what Masai has been saying. Like, they invested in him. And honestly, like the contract he's making is not massive when you think about it in the next 3-4 years. Like 30 plus million is not, it's not too crazy. It's worth the investment. But it's just being able to see, is he going to be able to gel with Scotty in the pick and roll? What does that look like, right?
You got to see.
Yeah. So and his touch around the rim, I want to see if it gets even more efficient. He's a great shooter, but can he get to the rim? And his Florida touch wasn't really that there as it was in New York. So yeah, I'm just trying to see if Quickly can be that guy, and if it is, then on the right trajectory. And he's still young. He's what, 24, 25?
Yeah, these guys are all still super young.
So they have time.
They do have time. And I think I'm looking at it in a positive sense.
Of course.
The positive look on this is IQ can kind of be the next Kyle Lowry. If you think about when Kyle Lowry came to the Raptors, how he was in the league is not that different from where IQ was in the league. Not always a consistent starter at that time. Remember, him and Jose Calderon were kind of fighting for minutes.
I laugh to this day. Like, Jose Calderon was still the starting point guard while Lowry's still on his team at certain points. And then they had to trade him, and then, okay, now Lowry gets the full lead role. But I remember games where, like, Lowry was still coming off the bench. Obviously, he's still dealing with injury at that time.
Yes,
and, like, him and Casey were kind of butting heads. But, like you said, like Lowry had to earn his.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm thinking of with IQ is, at this point, we're not looking at him like multiple-time all-star, leader of a team. But I think when Kyle got here, we didn't look at him like that either. And so to see what Kyle became, I'm kind of hoping IQ can have something like that. Before we move on, how are you defining success this year for this team? Like, what is a successful year for you for the Raptors?
For me, it's can Quickly take that next step? Can Scotty take that next step? And can Grady Dick? To me, he's also a vital piece. Like the Raptors, like when you look at the last 5 years, what development success story have they had?
Scotty's probably the main one.
But like to me, that's a given, right?
Yeah.
But then when you think about the prior, you had Siakam, you had Fred VanVleet, you had OG Anunoby, you had Norman Powell. Like the list goes on, right? You've had pretty much none, right? So like this class, this upcoming, like they drafted 4 or 5 guys.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at it, like this is very important that they strike on one of the people they drafted, and that Grady Dick takes the next step. He's gained like 15 pounds this summer. He was getting pushed around last year.
No, he looks good.
So I'm excited to see what he looks like. He potentially is going to be like starting for this team this upcoming season. So
it's his spot to lose, I think,
especially with all the injuries. So
and he's played well so far in preseason. Obviously, preseason. Let's not look into it, but he looks at least more comfortable on the court. There were some games last year where it's like, this guy needs some time still.
Yeah.
He seems more comfortable this year. What I've been doing this summer, I told you about what you were doing this summer. I was watching a lot of the playoffs, and I was going back in time and saying, that's how I remembered it at the time. This is how it felt in the moment. Watching it back, does it give the same vibe? And I think I learned a lot about a lot of teams watching the playoffs, because now we're looking at all these teams differently. You know, Minnesota was a team that I was high on at the start of last season. I can't tell you how many of my friends told me I was stupid for liking Minnesota last season. Now I feel like...
Are you jumping off the cliff?
No, I'm staying there. Okay. I'm staying there. But I think there's a bunch of teams like Minnesota, like the Knicks, who we kind of learned more about them as the playoffs went on. I want to talk about the Wolves. Obviously, huge trade. Julius Randle, DiVincenzo. What are you expecting from them this year? We saw that they're capable of big stuff in the playoffs, kind of winning their first 2 rounds in basically 20 years. What do you see for them this year?
It's tough because my first reaction to the trade between them and the Knicks, sending Karl-Anthony Towns to New York, I'm like, why don't you wait? Like, you just had all this success getting to the Western Conference Finals. What's the rush to get rid of him? Like, you just had this success, and I would have said, hey, like, if another year you get more experience, Anthony Edwards develops, like, you could potentially beat that Dallas Mavericks team, right? So for me, it was just, I was questioning. I'm like, what's this move? Obviously, like, the salary cap and all that kind of stuff, like, Karl-Anthony Towns.
But it felt rushed. It felt rushed.
It felt rushed just in a way that, like, because I thought Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, like, they worked well together. Like, you beat the defending champions on, like that was a crazy series. So for me, it's like, why break up something that got you to the Western Conference Finals? That was my biggest question, right?
Yeah, I think I have that question too. Obviously, they get more depth, adding DiVincenzo, that first
guard depth. Yeah, like Rob Dillingham's not pressured to become off the bench and deliver right away.
Now he's a 5th guard. If he works out, he plays. If he doesn't, it'll be okay. But I think I still worry about them because I think Julius Randle's the playoff player, one of the worst we've seen in NBA history, definitely in the past 20 years. And I think that this team in the playoffs, like, Cat had some bad games, but Cat had some games where he rescued them. And I think that, of course, Cat's been like, the NBA Twitter's punching bag for a long time, put him on that list of guys NBA Twitter doesn't like. But he helped them a lot last year. And so I think they're going to miss that going forward. The other team that I feel like, I don't want to say this out loud, so please, grain of salt, the OKC Thunder, a bit overrated right now.
Oh, really?
I think we've all fallen in love with them over the past year. And I think that...
That's a hot take. I see everyone putting them number 1 seed in the West.
I think regular season team, they're absolutely great. Yeah. But I think in the playoffs, what I saw last year is it all came down to Shea scoring. And I think we look at them as a deep team, how they have a bunch of guys, a bunch of two-way players. But in the playoffs, Jalen Williams, J-Dub didn't play well. Chet had trouble shooting the ball. Isaiah Joe had trouble playing. It was Wiggins, who's usually their 7th, 8th man, who was closing games for them. And so right now I'm like, are they a regular season team and in the playoffs it's just Shea by himself? Yeah. They got to prove that to me still.
It's like wondering, is the youth, will that catch up in the playoffs, right? But to me, it's like, I look at it like they addressed a lot of the concerns, right? Rebounding was a major concern. They picked up Isaiah Hartenstein. So it's like, and then you get Alex Caruso. To me, that was like
a big pickup.
That was a crazy. Like, you got rid of Josh Giddey, who brought you nothing. He was unplayable in the playoffs because he can't shoot the ball, can't space the floor when Shea's doing his thing. And you bring a guy like Alex Caruso who's gonna be able to guard. He's one of the best like wing defenders, and then you're also gonna be able to have him like space the floor. It's and then to me, it's like, even if it's not this year, man, Chet in 2-3 years. You got Williams in 2-3 years. Like, it's hey, man, the core 3 of them, of Shea, J-Dub, and Chet, man.
That's a successful 3, it seems like. I think in theory, they should be great. I think Chet was a rookie last year. We almost forget that because he played so well. We're just like, he's in the league now almost like, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum when they were coming up, where as rookies, they were so competent right away. Yeah. Chet has so many years to grow. Big men sometimes take the longest to develop. Yeah. For Chet in his first year, imagine Chet in 4 years, 5 years.
And they asked him to do a lot last year. Now he can breathe with Isaiah backing him up, right?
Yeah, so I think I'm interested to see what they do because right now I think they're overrated. I think right now they have the potential.
I'll give you that. I love that, though.
No,
I've never heard that.
My main thing is they don't have enough guys that can dribble. It honestly is an old school Raptors type of team where when we were in our heyday, we had DeMar, Kyle, and it felt like we didn't have enough ball handlers. It was like Corey Joseph save us. And obviously we saw how that went. So they feel kind of like that where Shea can handle the ball, make plays. J-Dub can handle the ball and make plays. But after that, who do they have? So that I'm kind of worried about. A team that does have enough guys is the New York Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
I loved them during the season last year because Jalen Brunson is one of my guys.
He's a dog.
He's one of those players that I've always thought of him as an all-star caliber player. So to see him become this MVP candidate, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I knew he was nice, but didn't know he was that nice. What do you think about them? Because now they add Cat. They have all these guys on the wing, not as deep as before, but we saw what they could do even last year when they were missing a bunch of guys.
To me, they're the biggest challengers to the Boston Celtics in the East. They have the guys that can guard Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yep.
Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, two of the top 5, I would say, like wing defenders in the league, right?
For sure.
So you address that concern. You can match up with them. You got Brunson. To me, Julius Randle, like you had so much success. It's like, where did he kind of fit, right?
Yeah.
And now you get Cat who can space the floor for you. Like, hey, man, the question is like, hey, Mitchell Robinson's out now until January. So the big question is, where does the forward position, like, I don't believe in Precious Achiuwa, no offense, but it's like, hey, like, where's Cat's backup, right? And he struggled a lot. Now he's going to go back to his old coach, Tom Thibodeau, where he struggled as the main big man as center defensively. So it's like they were ranked, Minnesota back in the day when Tom Thibodeau was there, they were ranked 20th defensively. So it's now you're wondering, like, where could they be defensively, right?
We're almost in a twilight zone where Tom Thibodeau was going to be leading an offensive team.
Yeah.
Because the Knicks are probably going to be top 5 in offense.
But you'd hope that Mikal and OG could help Cat out, right? But,
yeah, I think that's going to be the question because OG, we're familiar with him in Toronto. Injuries all over his career. That's just a part of who he is.
And it's like freak injuries. It's like the most random injuries you ever hear about.
Every single time. So it's like, I think that's going to be a big thing for them because they don't have the depth at that forward position. I think they're going to be a team where guys want to go play with them because I think that having someone like Brunson and Cat as your 2 anchors offensively, the role players and minimum guys, the veteran minimum guys are going to want to join them. So I think in that way, they're going to pick up some pieces, but those are the teams that I thought about from last year. Now we're going to look forward, okay? Yeah. I got 5 teams for you that I'm focused on personally. I know everyone has their own team. I know y'all OKC fans.
Let me hear it.
Tired of hearing that, but number 1 for me is the Dallas Mavericks. Okay. To me, probably the most underrated team right now. They made the finals. Luka is the MVP favorite basically every season. They added Klay Thompson, added Najee Marshall, PJ Washington, and Gafford for a full season now. But a lot of people are not picking them to go as far this year. What am I missing about that? Because I think all the ingredients are there, but people are not picking them to go as far.
I'll be honest, I'm a bit down on them, but I see your point. Like, to me, I'm just not sure how much Klay still has in the tank. That's my biggest concern. It's, okay, but Luka's going to make everyone look amazing on the floor. Like, this is going to be the most open shots Klay probably gets in the last 5 years.
That's what I think.
So, and what I love about what Dallas is doing, especially when you look at the last few years, Dallas, Boston, it seems like a pattern. Like, a lot of these teams go all in, right? They go and they get guys that will fit with Luka and will help them chase a championship, and they'll be willing to trade whatever. Like, Boston's traded for Drew Holiday, they traded for Kristaps that helped solve them, right? And then for Luka, they traded PJ Washington, they traded a bunch of picks for that. They got Kyrie, they got another ball hunter to help out Luka, and then now you have lob threats with Derek Lively, Gafford. So that team is kind of fits perfectly. You just got to hope they stay healthy.
Yeah, to me, they would be one of my choices to go to the finals. We'll obviously get to that at the end, but I think why I believe in them so much is the Luka factor.
Yeah.
There are really 4 guys in the league for me that you can guarantee are going to have a good playoff game every time they're on the court. Injury, no matter what's going on, they're going to have a good game. I think it's Giannis, Jokic, LeBron, and Luka. Basically, everybody else is like, I hope you're feeling good today. And I think once you have
Don't forget about Shea, man.
Shay's on that list. He doesn't have the reps, of course, but Shea would be kind of the honorable mention on that list. But I think if you have one of those guys, you got a shot to win it all, unless you have a stacked team, of course. So that's kind of why I believe in Dallas a lot. One of the other teams on my teams to watch is the Milwaukee Bucks. We were all hype last year when they got Damian Lillard. Listening back to some of those podcasts, seeing some of those stories, it felt like it was 4 years ago when everyone wrote, this team's going to win 60 games, they're going to have the best offense.
That's facts.
And in the end, they didn't have a horrible season from a win standpoint. Adrian Griffin probably has the best winning percentage of any coach that's ever been fired. But the narrative just felt like there's such a negative on that team. They really struggled. And when I told you I was watching back some old clips from last year's playoffs, one that stood out to me was Chris Middleton.
Mm.
Once Dame was injured and went out, Chris Middleton stepped up in a huge way. I think he had 38 in that game 3 or game 4. So seeing that he still has that gear in the playoffs, I believe in him a little bit more. How do you feel about them and their chances of going back to the finals and ultimately winning another one?
To me, they have to be one of the favorites in that mix with the top 3 teams. Maybe I'll put them 4. Like, to me, the East kind of looks like it's Boston, it's New York, it's Philly, and it's Milwaukee. Those are the 4 teams. I'm just concerned about the age of that roster, man. Brook Lopez is aging. Even like you mentioned, Chris Middleton played well, but like he's aging also.
Even Pat Connaughton off the bench, Dame.
And what I was really concerned about was when I think Dame and Giannis talked about they didn't really work out together this summer.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be your most important partnership that carries you to the finals, right?
Yep.
So my big concern is just how is that partnership going to work? Are they going to get the reps? And they're supposed to be the most lethal pick and roll duo. We haven't seen it yet. Hasn't showed out yet. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But they're definitely up there in the East.
I think for me, the 2 things I want to see is their guard defense. Gary Trent, I think, he's not that guy to guard the best defender in a way that Drew Holiday or Derek White can. Like, he hasn't shown that in his career yet. But I think it's going to come from Dame. I've always said, like, when the worst defenders on your team buy in and put the effort in, you see the team defense go to great heights. And the example has always been Steph Curry. There was times in those finals when they would switch on him and he would be ready for that matchup. And he might still, get blown by or bodied, but he was ready for that.
100%.
And I think Dame needs to kind of embody some of that and be ready on the defensive end. He said it, that he wants to do that. He said he's ready for that. Obviously, we got to see if it actually happens.
He's also aging too.
No, and that's the thing is like aging in this era in the NBA is such an odd thing because I think about how many players we have who are some of the best players in the league. Yeah. In their, early 30s, mid 30s, the Jimmy Butlers, the Steph Currys, the Kevin Durants. Yeah. So it's like, will Dame be, like a Steph Curry, like a Kevin Durant, still good in his mid 30s, or will he be more like a Chris Paul?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to see. Philly is the other team. They're the 3rd team I'm really trying to watch.
I don't want to root for them, but hey, man, they're intriguing.
They are intriguing. I will say this: they kind of have a caveat to me. Because I don't really believe in Joel as their leader. He gives me like he's more kind of an introverted guy, not really that guy to lead a team, especially on the floor. But they have the talent. Like, I think 1 to 10, like maybe one of the deepest teams in the league. What do you see for them this year? Because they're going to be just judged off what they do in the playoffs.
Exactly. For me, regular season should not matter at all. Play Joel Embiid maybe 50 games max. He should just be getting ready. Who cares about most MVP award? Who cares about that damn award? Let Tyrese Maxey, Paul George get you to the finish line, get you to the playoffs, and Joel Embiid. This is the time. You've had stinkers in the playoffs. Let's be real.
Yep.
This is your opportunity to show why you consider yourself the best player in the world. So it's going to be up. Like, we don't care about regular season no more, especially with this Philadelphia team. So Joel Embiid's going to have to show in the playoffs, and that's the only thing that matters. Like, the amount of jokes I've seen, like, hey, this person made it to the first NBA Finals before Joel Embiid.
Yeah, like, those are pretty funny.
Right? It's like, what? It's like people getting rings, people that you didn't expect to get married have a ring before Joel Embiid. Like, he needs to dead those talks. He needs to be that guy in the playoffs and be dominant.
Yeah, I think at least we need to see that it's not his reason why they don't go far. I think that's the main thing why I compared him to James Harden in the past, is that a lot of the top players, we kind of give them, a leeway when they don't make it far of circumstances, things happen. It's a small number of guys who are balling out for the whole series. And when their team loses, you're like, it wasn't their fault. Luka has been one of those guys, but a lot of the top guys, sometimes in the playoffs, they can't perform. Joel Embiid has been, sometimes great games, like the 50-point game he had last playoffs, or some stinkers, like in that game 6. So I think we're going to see kind of what he's really made of. He has the talent around him now where there's really no excuse at all.
Yeah. That's what I want to see, just a playoffs with no excuse. He's healthy full-time. Like, there's no, like, eye problem with him. There's no, like, him getting, like, elbowed or randomly by Pascal Siakam. Like, I just want to see a full playoff where there's no excuses. There's no excuses, right?
Yeah. My one reason why they will do well is the Kyle Lowry factor. Kyle Lowry we trust. So just having that leadership from Kyle, maybe that takes them to another level. But personally, I'm not going to lie, they're not on my believe list. I'm choosing them to not make it to the finals. This team also underrated. I don't know if I believe in them, but I want to give them their credit because they actually have achieved some stuff. That's the Indiana Pacers.
Okay.
Eastern Conference Finals last year, NBA Cup Finals last year as well. But, Tyrese Halliburton had a great start to the season. Pascal, NBA champion, joins the team. We saw a bunch of their role guys play great. So, they should be on the up. They have a bunch of young role guys who are only getting better. They have, an NBA champion, all-star, all-NBA player, and Pascal joining them. So why are we not believing in them? Because, they showed they can win. They added this new star to their team, a bunch of young guys coming up. Why is this team not in the top 4 for everyone? Because I think if, you're looking objectively, they've kind of showed that they've done what it takes to be in that top 4.
I think the biggest concern with them is they love to score. They don't play any defense.
Yeah.
You will see them score 120. Now you check the scoreboard. Like if you're betting, that's the team you go over on. But
every time
they also allow 130 every night.
Yeah.
So it's just like, and then you wonder, like, in the playoff series, who's your best defender? Pascal Siakam?
Nemhard. Maybe he's their guy, but you're right. That's their issue is Miles Turner is basically an offensive player now, which I never thought I would say that. So defensively, I don't know if I believe in them, but I still was surprised that they even made it as far as they did. Of course, injuries played a huge part in that, but...
And nothing has to change. Like their identity of running the floor, that kind of stuff, it's going to pay well in the regular season. Like they could be a top candidate to finish top in the East. Like I won't be surprised if that happens. It's just when it gets to the playoff series where you're playing half-court basketball, can this team actually defend?
Yeah, I think that we're going to have to see because there's enough teams in the East this year that are good that they're going to have to beat some healthy teams. Yeah. Even going down to Orlando or Cleveland, there's enough decent teams where it's like you're going to have to defend at some point. So we're going to see. I want to give them their credit, though, because, listen, a big swing in a small market, Eastern Conference Finals. How many teams, would want that to be their destiny? Adding a former NBA champion.
They're a fun team.
So I think this may be the highest they get in the next few years. If we're being honest, they could kind of have like a Raptors run of not making it farther than playoffs, but winning a lot of regular season games. Yeah. So I want to acknowledge this moment right here where they just made the Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah. Maybe the NBA Cup is theirs this year. The NBA Cup favorites heading into the season.
They might be.
Yeah. The last team I want to talk about is the Phoenix Suns.
Ooh.
I feel like they've just kind of been gone by the wayside.
Yeah, I don't care about them, to be honest.
No, and I realize that. And I think that why I thought of them is, the NBA narratives, like almost like every 6 months it changes.
Of course.
And I remember this time last year, people were choosing them to be a top 4 team because they took the Nuggets to 6 games. And that feels like it happened, 8 years ago now? But it was really just last season where they took Nuggets to 6 games. They added Bradley Beal since then, added 2 of the most, conservative, safe point guards in the league. But still, it seems like nobody cares. So is that 2 years ago? Does it not matter what happened against the Nuggets? Like, where are we with them? Because they have a ton of talent. They showed they can play. They're adding a new coach who's won a championship before in Budenholzer.
Yeah.
Yep. So what about them is like we're never going to turn on them because they could have the best player in a lot of series.
They could, and they could have probably 3 best if you rank it. They'd probably like those 3 best are probably better than any other 3+ players on other team, right?
Yeah.
The depth. They're just missing guys. Like you have to pay Bradley Beal. You got to pay Durant. You got to pay Booker, and like where else does that money go? So I think a lot of what they're banking on right now is their development guys. Their guys coming up will help.
Hopefully
help them out, but also just like Bradley Beal's missed 40+ games last year. So can this team actually stay healthy? Durant's aging, like we said, and I'm never one to doubt Durant, but that team is just, I don't know if they can stay healthy. Full 3, like I watched 20 straight games of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant playing together.
I think we're asking a lot. I think we're asking a lot for that.
So then what are we supposed to see?
My suggestion is Bradley Beal comes off the bench.
Ooh.
I think it's been so interesting that no one has said that.
You think he would do? You think that would be?
I don't know if he would do it.
That's like an ego.
That's probably the highest paid player to ever come off the bench, making $50 million dollars a year. But I think it's interesting that no one's mentioning it because when Melo went to OKC, people brought it up right away. When Westbrook went to LA, people brought it up right away. So to me, I think this is another one of those situations where have him come off the bench, the whole team is better. Like Bradley Beal as your lead bench scorer, best bench player in the NBA right away if you do that. So that to me is what I think would help fix a lot of their depth issues.
Yeah.
Is put Bradley Beal on the bench, stagger the three guys, because I think the three of them together, they haven't shown that is like absolutely killer where it needs to be playing all the time. So that's my suggestion. Bradley Beal off the bench and see how that goes.
Yeah, I just don't think he'll ever do it. He'll never co-sign that.
I don't think so
and it'd be a
either.
hard sell. He'll ask for a trade immediately once that happens. And yeah, it's just a lot of like those are your three. You paid him, you traded for him. Like you're gonna have to treat him nice.
Yeah, I think that's when I realized that maybe Bradley Beal isn't the winning player we thought he could be. I think that we kind of gave him the pass of it's Washington, it's not his fault. And I think that on this team, like
spotlight's on when you're playing with Durant.
And that's the part where I think he's still trying to kind of prove himself more than I'll do whatever it takes for the team to win. Because Bradley Beal should be the glue guy, the hustle guy. You know, Kawhi and Paul George have talked about it where they loved having the Batums, the Covingtons of the world, because those guys did all the dirty work. Bradley Beal should be that guy for Booker and KD. Like, KD shouldn't be guarding the best player. Like, that should not be happening. And sometimes the other guys aren't two-way players, so it hurts to play them in the same way. So to me, I think that would be helpful to the team, but obviously probably not likely. But I'm interested in Phoenix this year because, again, it was only a year ago. Phoenix was the Minnesota of this year. Like Minnesota, we're talking Minnesota this year, that was Phoenix last year. And Durant and Booker are much more accomplished than anyone on that Minnesota team. So maybe something could happen. I'm not sure, but I do think that big three of Durant, Steph, and LeBron, they're probably done in terms of playoff success.
Yeah,
I want that to not be true. I want one of them to go far at some point in the next couple of years, but doesn't it feel like that's over with for all of them? Like, can you see any of those teams going far in the playoffs?
It's tough. No, I don't, to be honest. Like, and I think LeBron's fine with that too. If you ask him, like, he has nothing to accomplish left. He's gonna go down, in my opinion, as the second greatest basketball player of all time. Like, what can you like? There's nothing else for him to do. Kevin Durant too. Like, to me, he's arguably top 10 greatest players of all time. Same with Curry. It's like there's nothing for them really left to do.
Their legacy
is stamped.
I think who needs it the most for their legacy is Durant.
You think so?
Like, Durant's legacy would benefit the most from another championship. Obviously on a separate team, not with the Warriors. People love to kind of take those championships away from him.
Of course.
And then late in his career, the other two guys have a late career championship. Steph in 2022, LeBron in 2020. If KD gets one, I think it helps his career the most. But you're right.
To me, he's stamped. It doesn't matter. He gets one, he doesn't get one. Like, we can talk, he joined a 72-win team. Hey, Kevin Durant's Kevin Durant, one of the greatest scorers of all time. Yeah,
and I think his legacy is cemented in the way that he affects the next generation. If anyone's been paying attention, the past few years, the GM survey, Kevin Durant is the player that players are more trying to be like, emulating their favorite player over LeBron.
Yeah.
And even though it may not show in the All-Star voting, Kevin Durant has a huge impact on the stars of today. Edwards, we've mentioned, Durant's his favorite player. Victor Wembanyama, maybe the future face of the league, Kevin Durant is who he's emulating. So I think even though people do have some hate for him, his legacy is absolutely stamped. Before we get out of here, we got to get some predictions. Of course. Listen, people, this is not betting advice. Don't put any money on these predictions.
Not. Hell no.
But to be trusted. To be trusted. I think let's start with MVP. Of course, we got a bunch of guys in the mix this year. I feel some voter fatigue. I think Jokic, they don't want him to get another one. I don't think that's happening. Embiid, I don't think that's happening. Giannis, I would say, is a long shot, but I don't think that's happening. I think it is probably going to be between Luka, Shea, and Jason Tatum. Is there anyone outside of that three things going to win, or is one of those three guys who your choice is to win MVP?
My pick will be Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. And I think he has the pieces to do it. Like, it's, to me, honestly, he should have won last year. I think Jokic is like worthy MVP, but to me, he wasn't as great as he was defensively as he was the year prior. So for me, I think Shea's my front runner. I put the whole house on it. I don't bet, but if I was a betting guy, with that OKC team just perfectly around him now, like Shea's the guy. Luka too, you could put a case for.
I think whoever wins the most games out of those two guys is going to get it.
Yeah.
Like, whichever one of those guys wins more games, and I think it's going to be Shea and OKC. But I do have kind of a tough time giving the MVP to someone who we don't think is the best player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we'd agree Shea is top 5 and top 10 for some,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think anyone would argue Shea is the best player in the league.
I would argue he's top 3. To me, it's Jokic. Actually, I'd probably argue for top 4. It's Jokic, Giannis, Luka, and I think it's Shea. That's my top 4.
I agree with that, but I think that most people wouldn't make the argument for Shea actually jumping most of the other guys.
I think he will, though. That's my case too. I'm like, I think Shea's about to take that next leap where it's like, if he stacks up with MVP, he wins a championship. We're soon talking, okay, this is Shea's era.
Listen, I love Shea. I don't want to talk bad about Shea, but I think the size of those other guys will always kind of stand the test of time. I think the larger players always are going to be the more impactful players. That's why someone like Giannis at 7 foot, Jokic, even Luka, those guys always just have more impact because of their size. Shea's been an outlier already in his career, so I don't want to.
He was supposed to be here.
Yeah, I can't put limits on that guy at all. But I would love to see him win another MVP. Of course, we love to shout out the Canadians. Second Canadian MVP, like that would be big. He's probably the best Canadian player of all time already. So the MVP would just stamp it even more. So my pick is actually Luka to win MVP. I think that he's someone who everyone's just penciling him in for MVP. Feels like for 4 seasons now.
Yeah, triple-double machine.
Yeah, and I think that he's getting to the point almost Jokic-esque where the things he's doing are seen as normal.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
Yeah, like I realized that. I said, like, this is kind of iffy. Like, he averaged almost 34 points a game last year, and when James Harden did it, it felt like the world was crashing down. And when Luka does it, it's just like normal.
Simple.
Yeah, so I think he's my choice for MVP. Let's talk finals. Okay, this is really what matters, who's making the finals. Give me your 2 teams in the East and your 2 teams in the West.
It's tough. Boston, to me, is going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I picked them to go to the finals. It's just trying to figure out who that second team would be in the East. I'm gonna go with New York.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with New York. I wanted to say Philly, but I'm not. I can't say Philly. I can't say Philly. Just
I'm not gonna argue on that one.
So I would say Boston, New York, and then I'm gonna go with OKC in the West because I'm very high on them, as you can see. OKC. And I will go. I'll go with a rematch.
OKC Dallas.
But I'm picking OKC to win. OKC Boston Finals, and I'm going with an OKC win.
That I think would be historic.
Yeah.
Like a team this young making the finals.
Yeah.
You know, that's
I want to bet on it too. It's just like, it's just they're young. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest critique we have for them. And the fact that it's just, we're saying they're young and they can't do it makes me want to bet on it. It just wants to see it,
I want to see it too, because this is almost in sports across the board where the young teams don't usually win at that level right away. But if they can be the outliers, like we're already in an era of the NBA where things are different. We haven't had any repeat champions since the Raptors won in 2019. We've only had 2 teams make the finals more than once. So this feels like this era is wide open, and I think if OKC could win, that'd be part of that.
And I think chemistry goes a long way. Like, those guys actually like each other on the roster.
Yes.
Like, they get along. I'm like, these guys are all doing post-game interviews together. Like, that's going to carry on, So I'd pencil them in. How about you?
I like that. In the East, I got Milwaukee and Boston.
Okay.
I do believe in Giannis if Giannis is healthy. I think if he's healthy, he's the best player in the East. In the playoffs, no one has shown they can stop him. So as long as Giannis is healthy, I like them going to the finals. In the West, I got Dallas and Denver in the Western Conference Finals. I've been back and forth between like Denver and Dallas. Denver is an iffy team. We didn't talk about them much today, but obviously lost KCP, Bruce Brown the season before. Michael Porter has been iffy in the last couple of playoffs. Yeah. So I am kind of iffy on them.
But Jokic is Jokic, right?
So I'm going to end up choosing Dallas, Milwaukee in the final. Denver, Milwaukee in the final. Okay. Right now, I'm really leaning on the best players. That's kind of where my mentality is there's a lot of great teams. Yeah. And a lot of great rosters, but the best players usually
they dictate the league.
They're the ones that win. And the Olympics was fun, of course, seeing Steph Curry have like one of his best moments ever. But if you watch the Olympics, ain't nobody guarding Jokic. That's the moral. That's the moral of the story. Not one player on one team from any country could guard Jokic. And if that continues in the playoffs, I see them going far. So I got Denver winning it. Denver, beating Milwaukee in the finals. I feel like I'm probably the only one who has that final. But again,
I love to see it.
Top 2 guys in the league. Like that feels like a safe pick to make the finals. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments. Like, who are your teams that are going to win it? Anyone that we forgot to mention? There's so much to watch this season. Like, we didn't talk about a lot of the stories on the side. Of course, what's Wemby gonna be?
Oh man,
like
he's my if I'm a fantasy, if I'm playing fantasy basketball, he's my number 1 pick.
Number 1.
He's my number 1 pick.
Number 1's kind of crazy. Number 1's kind of crazy.
Chris Paul is gonna get that guy the easiest baskets ever.
Number 1's kind of crazy, but
I would go number 1, and the blocks he's gonna get, man. Oh
yeah, no blocks, steals.
It's crazy, but hey, I'm picking Wemby.
I don't know about number 1, but he's up there for me. Like he's one of those players that I can't even tell you what he's gonna be. Like I'd give me like 18 months to decide how I feel about what he can be, because he could be the best center we've ever seen, or the best wing. He's already one of the best defenders we've ever seen.
One of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, he's already in that category. So yeah, I want to see what y'all think in the comments. Like, who are the players you're excited to watch this season? And then last but not least, I wanted to shut them out because this is a conversation for another time. Mid-season, when we do this again, we'll talk about them. But the Memphis Grizzlies, I think they were in that spot before Minnesota got in that spot. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do.
I'm very excited. Job back, and Zach Edey sending him screens, so he's going to go downhill, yam it on these people, man.
He looks like he's in shape.
He's in shape, man. Yeah. And he's showing the stroke, the shot, man.
Yeah.
If they can stay healthy, if Memphis can stay healthy, man. They got some injuries piling up a bit, but hey.
I'm very, very excited, man. Listen, I want to hear what everyone thinks. Like, let us know your finals picks, okay? Just finals, who's in the East, who's in the West, who's making it. I kind of feel like neither of us is going to be correct. I don't know. I don't know what gives me that vibe.
That's why I always hate making predictions, because I look back at it and I'm like, damn, I was way off.
Yeah,
you know. But it's also fun, you know.
Yeah, no, it's fun to be wrong sometimes. Yeah. This is the only time it is. I want to thank everyone for watching, making it this part in the podcast. Of course, you can find us on Instagram at The Cool Table Live, on YouTube at The Cool Table. You can find me on TikTok at AngelSmiley.com. Make sure you follow everything Libaan is doing at the Toronto Star. And of course, until next time, know yourself, know your worth.